It's my request. Patriots, this best for you.
Welcome to Patriots Central Radio with Jeremy Dawson and Steve Balestriei.
New England, what up?
International show report.
Yeah, we on the road. The Pats going ham for the Super Bowl. Brady got the ball and it's all good. Get another ring and it's all good. It's one game.
Good evening and welcome back to Patriots Central. Patriots Central Radio is a proud part of the Pro Football Radio Network. Tonight, I'm your host, Steve Balestriei, and joining me is my co-host, Jeremy Dawson. Jeremy, how are you this evening?
I'm doing very well. Excited to get back into football. How about yourself?
Absolutely. And this week, the Patriots have been in Philadelphia. They've been doing joint practices with the Eagles, getting ready for their first preseason game. I think it's something we're all looking forward to. And I think this is the first big test for all the rookies on the roster.
It's definitely going to be a fun game to watch. I know the practices went very well, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing this game. The Patriots, they got a lot of new stuff coming out, and we're finally going to get to see it with full contact, so that's going to be really good.
Absolutely. And, especially, you're dealing with all the new wide receivers. You're dealing with all these rookies on the roster. So a lot of what we saw the first day or so at the practice in Philadelphia, I take that with a grain of salt, honestly, because, Brady, for the day, I think they said he was 46 of 48. But, when you're dealing with a team that you haven't scouted, I mean, they haven't watched film on the Philadelphia Eagles, and nor have the Eagles watched film on the Patriots. That's why I think both of the offenses were a little ahead of the defenses the first couple of days. And I think we'll see that kind of come back in line with the game tomorrow night. I don't think they're going to be, lighting it up. I think it's going to be a good football game. I'm excited to see these young guys play.
Definitely. And we'll definitely touch on it more a bit later, get more in depth. But for now, just going to say that I'm excited to have football back. And we got a game last week that we got to watch, and it's definitely I know I was watching SportsCenter earlier, and they had up on one of the topics, it was football is back, and it just, I got butterflies.
Absolutely. And that's the best part about this year. Now, every weekend between now and February, we're going to have football to watch. So that's the good part of it. All of this is football is back, and the players are, excited. There's been a rash of injuries, though, so far this year, early in training camps, and I am hoping that the Patriots can stay away from that injury bug that's going around when they play tomorrow night.
Definitely. A lot of knees going out. I really hated to see it. I've been in a few conversations on Twitter with some people, and a lot of people are saying that maybe we're just taking notice because Twitter blew up. Maybe we're just taking notice because it's higher profile guys. But I don't know. I really think that there's more leg injuries than usual going on right now. It's really sad to see, but it's strange.
It is. A lot of ACLs blowing out, and it seemed like last year it was all the Achilles tendons going out.
Right.
It seems like things are going in cycles. Because I remember last year at training camp, I remember thinking that at the time it seems very strange that so many players were blowing out their Achilles tendons last year. It just seemed like an awful lot. This year, it's all like ACLs and meniscus tears, and it's just, I hate to see that. I don't care if you're a fan of whatever team. I don't want to see any other players get injured. It's just not, I know it's a part of the game, but it's just not something you look at, and I don't care who the guy is or what team he plays for. I never wish an injury on anyone.
I agree, definitely. I mean, it doesn't matter if they play for the Jets. I mean, you want to play your opponents when they're at full strength, so you prove you're actually the better team.
Absolutely. So what do you say we get ready to bring on our first guest, excuse me.
We already have two hosts.
Cigar fans, check out fifthdowncigar.com and enter the coupon code PFC to get 10% off your order. Lots of nice high-end cigars. That's fifthdowncigar.com. Enter the code PFC for 10% off your order.
Joining us as our first guest is Mike Tanier. Mike Tanier is a staff writer for Sports on Earth. It focuses on the NFL. He joined Football Outsiders in 2005, co-authored Pro Football Perspectives from 2005 to 2008, as well as Football Outsiders Almanac from 2009 and 2012. He's also written game previews for the New York Times, Fox Sports, and he lives very close to the Eagles training facility at the Link and has written a book called The Philly Fans Code. It's a humorous look at different athletes that played for Philadelphia. He's a very established writer. Mike, welcome to Patriots Central Radio.
Hey, it's great to be on, and I got to see those Patriots just really a few miles from my home, and, you know, covering the Eagles a lot. I was with the Eagles beat writers, and we were watching practice, and you can talk on the Eagles, around the Eagles campfire as well, who's going to win the quarterback battle. And after Tuesday and Wednesday, we agreed that the quarterback battle was won by Tom Brady.
Well, let's get right into it, because I know that you were, you're down there, you're watching both teams, and I wanted to actually ask you a question about the Philadelphia Eagles first. You recently wrote about Riley Cooper returning to practice after a very short, quote-unquote, sensitivity training session. Were you surprised by the lack of reaction of any kind during his first practice back?
Yes, and I'm not one of those people who actually believe that he was going to go out there and get speared by an opponent. In other words, I'm not Marcus Vick. But what I expected was a little more of a crowd reaction. And I'm not even sure what crowd reaction I was expecting to see. Boos or protests or cheers or something. But I was expecting to see something to that regard or something else that made it look like this was not business as usual. And what I was amazed by, I guess I anticipated that football players, they have a job to do, starting spots to win. They were not going to turn this into an issue. But that no one else did either. And that fans, there were several hundred fans there, nobody looked at this as anything unusual. He was just another player on the field, which is really what he was a week ago this time before the racial incident blew up.
So that's a good point. So, in your opinion, do the Eagles keep him going forward? And if they do, would they have done that had not injury concerns possibly forced their hand in this?
It's hard to say. They're in a position now where they need Riley Cooper, and I think that does have an impact. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. He wound up there, and not only did he play that day, but he wound up having 2 or 3 touchdowns in long games, most of them against Alphonso Denard. So I think at this point, what has happened is that the locker room has kind of made peace with this. Whatever is done to put this behind you, that doesn't mean that there's never going to be a grumble or a whisper, but it sounds like the leaders on the team, Michael Vick, D'Amico Ryans, James Savant, those guys have kind of determined to move past this. And if that's the case, now it comes back to Riley Cooper on his own merits. And I guess I hope that in any workplace it would come down to the fellow workers and the employers and everyone, recognizing whether this was a problem or not a problem and making that decision on a case-by-case basis. It looks like the Eagles made their decision, at least from the standpoint of this as a controversy, not Cooper as a player.
Very good. Jeremy, you have a question for him?
Yes. I'm actually going to stick to Riley Cooper, but I was wondering, do you feel like maybe the way that training camp happened and how the crowd wasn't reacting at all, do you think maybe it's respect for him as a player out there, or do you think it's more of people just avoiding the sensitivity of race as an issue in general?
Are you talking about the fans or the fellow players?
The fans.
Well, we're in Philadelphia. This is not an area that avoids controversy or downplays things in general. And some of the old Philly fan thing is very overstated. The billing of Santa Claus happened during the LBJ administration, et cetera, et cetera. But when there's time to kind of turn something into a loopy wacky, crazy circus atmosphere, there's usually some evidence that's going to do that. I think that in this case, most people probably looked at this. I think some people who, are, I mean, I don't know how to say it just right, but, some people will probably have the attitude, well, it's just words. It's not something to have this level of hostility about. Some people steered away from it. But I think looking at society, looking at the city, as wrong as what he said was, a little bit of fatigue and exhaustion set in with the reaction to it. And I think by the time we got to Tuesday and Wednesday, most people were like, okay, he said he's a jerk, he's whatever. I don't have opinion one way or the other about Riley Cooper anymore. Can we please get back to football? And maybe it's different when you're talking about people at home, at their workplace, but for the several hundred people who are going to download and print a ticket to go to a game, I think it's a different mindset.
That's an interesting take on it. All right, so just to get away from that a bit, I read an article today they wrote that was speaking about how NFL training camps are comparable to cults. And I was wondering just if you could elaborate on that one a bit.
It's funny because in the course of a couple of hours yesterday afternoon, Greg Jennings, the former Packers wide receiver, now with the Vikings, was talking about how the Packers were brainwashing him into, loving the Packers and thinking the Packers were better than everybody else, which is weird because the Packers are better than everybody else in their division. A couple hours later, part of a Sports Illustrated story broke where Wes Welker kind of took some shots at Bill Belichick and said some things about how hard he was to deal with and how being, silenced in the media was something that kind of, he strafed against that for a while. And he kind of put the two of them together, and it's like this code of silence, brainwashing. It sounds like a cult. And when you then turn around and look at the way training camps operate, and you have the, exercising in the heat until you're exhausted and going to some remote place in the countryside, as many teams still do, it sounds a little bit like a cult. And when you get guys like Greg Jennings talking about being brainwashed, it's hard not to kind of chuckle at that, while at the same time maybe taking a little look at the culture, like Bill Belichick's culture, where you simply refuse to say anything, and you kind of force your players to not even like give their personality too much to the press, and why that is, and what effect that has, I guess, on our perception.
Definitely, I thought the article was actually pretty humorous, but it addressed a pretty realistic point at the same time. Steve, back to you.
Yeah, I especially love the picture of Janet Leigh, and because that was one of my favorite films. And when I saw this morning, I just couldn't stop laughing.
Isn't that a tremendous film? And of course, that's what brainwashing really is, or at least what we think of brainwashing is putting over the top thing. It's not taking the guys aside and saying, we're the Packers and we're the best organization in football. That's what your sales manager does at the office. That's what the guys at the auto mall do to try and get guys ramped up. They're not actually brainwashing you. I'm guessing Greg Jennings never worked any place like that and doesn't know that's just how corporate types or managers talk.
Because the first thing that came to mind when I saw that picture was I thought of Frank Sinatra saying, "What was Raymond doing with his hands?"
What's great is I got several tweets to that effect. It's like, oh, yeah, gosh. Yeah.
Actually, one of them was from me. I sent that to
you
today. Because it just, when I saw that and I saw the picture, I can't help it. I cracked up laughing. And I said that, and I was like, he probably thinks I'm a nut. But no. But that was a great article this morning, and I thought that was spot on. But anyway, let's get back.
Yeah. I don't think you're a nut. I think you're the kindest, bravest, warmest, most wonderful human being I've known in my life, man.
Oh, my God, that's hilarious. All right, let's get back to the joint practices between the Patriots and the Eagles. One of the things that I've been reading about with Chip Kelly is he has a lot of innovative, new ways of doing things. And I hear he really sets a really fast tempo to his practices. Is that something that was in evidence this week?
We saw bits and pieces of it, and we saw bits and pieces of them being extra conventional, maybe to hide some things, or maybe because you're practicing against the other team and you need to get both sides reps. I did some points where they were doing a full hurry-up, and I timed them, and I had times of 5 plays in 1 minute and 43 seconds. I don't have the exact number in front of me, but what you would see is the quick hurry-up. And I think, obviously Patriots fans have seen some hurry-up, some of the best, up-tempo offense in the NFL. And you've seen, Peyton Manning run something against you for years, which is also one of the best up-tempo offenses in the NFL. The way this one will look different, I don't think it's any faster, but you can tell right away Chuck Kelly's going to be doing that while he's running handoffs and read options. And when I think of Tom Brady run the up-tempo, short pass, short pass, short pass. The same thing with Manning with the audible to a run. This is going to be handoff, gain of 5, and everybody kind of climbing to their feet. So you can see that it's going to be fast, and it's going to be a different kind of fast, because most teams, when they're running the ball, are actually trying to slow the pace down. That's one of the things I think will be unique as fans watch these games.
Very good. And, the big point of emphasis this week is on all these new young wide receivers the Patriots have, and how they're going to fare this season. A lot of people have been writing them off as saying that these guys aren't going to be able to handle it. Give us your impression on what you thought, how they were handling things so far down there, and albeit it's only practice, but how they looked going against another team for the first time.
What's the young man's name? I know he's got to be buzzy in New England. Tompkins? Tompkins?
Yeah.
Right.
Tompkins. He flashed, and the sports writers were talking too, and it's like, oh, we got this kid Tompkins, and everybody who comes in, they got a kid. He flashed immediately that he was special, that this was going to be a guy that was going to really make a name for himself in this camp and probably play a role. And that's where it kind of starts right there. And he's a kind of receiver I've not seen a lot in New England, where he's that bigger guy. He has the speed, he has the hands. He seems to have integrated himself well into the system. He was taking reps when I was there with the ones sometimes as the fourth or fifth guy and like an odd rep, and taking a lot of reps with the twos. And that's where it starts. I only saw a little bit of Dawson, and I didn't see a lot of the other young guys, but when you start factoring in the idea that Amendola, who was playing, had a drop or two, looks like he's kind of getting his legs under him. He has Edelman back. And when you start, if you factor in a guy like Tompkins, or you say you're going to have a big target, like a possession target like they haven't really had in New England for years, some of these other things I think are going to fall into place. So, that right away, that one individual stood out. And also, you have that tight end, is that Sudfeld?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's another guy. You probably have some questions at tight end, certainly. And you're looking at guys, and Ballard looks a little slow and a little inconsistent, although we know his blocking is good. The kid Sudfeld kind of right away stood out in practice. Very good hands, good enough speed, and, of course, this massively big young man, kind of a where did he come from kind of guy, who looks like Gronkowski when he's walking around.
Very good. Now, going back to the Eagles, so far in camp do the Eagles look to you, and where do you think they're going to finish this year? Because the NFC East is a very tough division.
Absolutely very tough division, and you have a very clear rebuilding team. I know you had mentioned going against the secondary that the Patriots receivers were facing a completely rebuilt secondary. Tony Williams, the cornerback from the Ravens, who was very hot and cold, got into a scuffle and was benched for one of the practices, so I didn't get to see a lot of him. And you have a secondary that is totally rebuilt. You have offensive skill positions that are being adjusted, and it's hard to look at the Eagles. And unless you're a Chip Kelly Kool-Aid drinker, and man, there's a lot of Chip Kelly Kool-Aid. They're selling it at Wawa's around here. You're looking at a team that even if this is the wave of the future, read option up tempo, it's going to take a year for them to shuffle the roster through at the defensive level, at the offensive line level, and come up with anything other than a 6-10 or a 7-9 season. And that's what I'm looking at there. And again, you're looking at opportunities for the future, and of course, you have to shuffle that quarterback situation.
Very good. Jeremy, do you have another question for our guest?
Yeah, I was wondering, just since he threw out a Patriots-Eagles comparison, I was wondering what type of matchups in precise you would be looking for during tomorrow's game.
I want to see, first of all, I want to see the Eagles read option in action. I think he's going to run it some, and it's going to be a very vanilla version. I just want to see what it looks like physically against another team. When I'm looking at the Patriots offense, and we talk about these new weapons, and we talk about the tight ends and the transfer, the Patriots, from an X and O standpoint, have been a team where the tight ends were the guys who stretched the opponent. and with wide receivers worked underneath. And that for the last 2 years has been very unique. Most teams have tight ends that work underneath, and the receivers are the guys who stretch the field. But when you had Gronkowski and Hernandez, you could force teams into space, force safeties and linebackers to try and take those roles, and those guys could open up all that space underneath for your Welkers and your Edelman. I want to see what they're doing, if there's any evidence that they're adjusting now and saying, okay, Gronkowski might be out indefinitely. Can we stretch the field with our receivers? Can we stretch the field with Amendola, Dawson, and some of these guys, and then use tight ends the way other teams do them? I'm wondering how that's going to work, and I'm wondering if that's not what is planned, if they really think that they can go out there if Gronkowski's hurt and kind of run what they ran in the last couple of years. That being said, watching the 11-on-11s, I think Tom Brady hit it off every time. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm watching tomorrow a bunch of handoffs off tackle when the Patriots get the ball. You don't want to show anything, right? You don't want to show, and of course Ryan Mallett for 3 quarters, and then Tebow Mania.
Mike, before we let you go, tell people where they can find you on Twitter and on the internet.
You can find me on the internet at sportsonearth.com, which is Division USA Today and MLB.com. We cover all sports. We've got not just me, but Will Leach, Patrick Truby, Chuck Culpepper, Gwen Knapp, a whole bunch of your favorite writers from different newspapers and websites around the world. And you can find me on Twitter at Mike Tanier. That's Mike, Tanier, at Mike Tanier. Tweeting about everything. We'll certainly be tweeting some Eagles Patriots tomorrow.
Excellent. Mike, we just want to thank you for coming on tonight, and we want you to know that you're the kindest, gentlest, most warmest person in the world.
This has been welcome to the Patriots and 1960s film podcast for the ages.
Thank you very much.
Football fans, check out ProFootballCentral.com for all the latest NFL news and analysis. Also, check out the very popular Pro Football Central radio network for awesome NFL talk around the league. Go to ProFootballCentral.com. ProFootballCentral.com.
And welcome back to Patriots Central. Patriots Central Radio is a proud part of the Pro Football Central Radio Network. And we had a very interesting and a very amusing guest in with Mike Tanier. And now we're getting ready to wrap up the show. Jeremy, what are you looking for tomorrow night with the Patriots playing the Eagles?
I'm looking for receivers most of all. Definitely looking to see how the receivers do. I want to see the tight ends, and I definitely want to see how Alfonso Denner does, because I heard that he was getting burned a little bit during the practices, but I know that he was doing great at ours. But I also know that he was ailing from an injury, so just a combination of things that I'm definitely looking forward to.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, what I'm looking for tomorrow night is some of the rookies on defense. I know Logan Ryan was an early draft pick, and he's had his up and down moments in camp. But, the guy that surprised me, and we've been down there every day, is Daron Harmon. Daron Harmon, that safety that the Patriots were just ridiculed for selecting, has been really solid in camp, and I think he's turned a few heads. And the other guy is the linebacker they also got from Rutgers, Steve Boharnis, who's another guy that's kind of stepped up. He's been really good. He's a lot more athletic than I think he was given credit for. He's a very short tackler. And I think that, he's going to play a lot of snaps on Friday night. I'm anxious to see how the defense does, of course, the wide receivers. I think it's going to be a very interesting look at the first preseason game.
Definitely. And as it comes closer, I mean, Kenbrell Tompkins, he's been great so far, and I really hope that he does better. But once game situations are on, it's a whole nother ball game. So I'm hoping to see him. I want to see more from Josh Boyce. I want to see what he's got, because I feel like he's kind of been holding back with us. And Aaron Dobson, of course, I want to see Danny Amendola make sure that he's as good as he's been advertised and as good as he's looked during training camp. There's a lot going on right now, and I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. And of course, the guy I want to see a lot of is Jamie Collins, who was the Patriots' top draft pick. I think we'll see a lot of him on defense as well as special teams. And I think it's going to be a fun night. But to wrap this up, we'd like to thank our listeners for listening in to the Patriots Central Radio. Stay tuned for further episodes and follow us on Twitter at Patriots Central or at PF Central. You can follow us at our personal accounts, myself at Steve B, 7SFG. Jeremy, how can our listeners find you?
You can find me on Twitter as well at jdawson_NFL. And you can find me on Fifth Quarter Mag and Patriots Central, of course.
And if any of our listeners or readers have any questions about training camp, they can tweet them to us at Patriots Central or on our personal accounts, and we'll be happy to answer them. For myself, Steve Balestriei, and my co-host, Jeremy Dawson, thank you very much for listening, and good night.
This has been a presentation of the Pro Football Central Network. For news, blogs, highlights, and more, log on to ProFootballCentral.com.